I was walking past my son's room when I heard him whisper to his wife, "Once she's gone, the house is ours." I didn't say a word. The next morning, I called my lawyer. When they showed up for their usual free dinner that evening, I handed them an envelope and said, "Read it." Their faces went white. "Subscribe to the channel. Leave your like and comment from which part of the world you are watching. Get comfortable and relax. Let's begin." The tray was warm in my hands. The glass pitcher of lemonade sweated cold droplets onto my fingers. I had just turned from the stairs, the sound of Marcus's voice from the guest room a normal part of the evening's fabric. Then the tone shifted. The door was not closed, just ajar by a few inches. A sliver of yellow light cut across the dim hallway runner. I paused, not to eavesdrop, but because the cadence was wrong. It was a low, urgent whisper that stopped my foot on the polished wood. "Just be patient." That was Marcus. I almost called out to tell them the drinks were ready, but the next voice froze the words in my throat. Chloe's whisper was sharper, a blade of sound. "Patient for what? We've been patient. The market is perfect asterisk now asterisk. We need to list." "We can't list a house she's living in, Chloe. Be realistic." "That's my point." Her words were measured, each one placed with cold precision. "Once she's gone, the house is ours. It's free and clear. That's a 7-figure asset just sitting here, full of her old furniture and books. We sell, we take the capital, and we build the life we're supposed to have. Not this waiting." The silence that followed was not shock. It was consideration. I knew the difference in my son. I heard the soft creak of the floorboards as he moved. He was thinking it over, not rejecting it. "It's a big house for one person," he finally said, his voice a murmur of false concern. "She'd be happier in a managed community, safer. We'd be doing her a favor, really. We just need to guide her to see it that way. Before she gets any older and the decisions get harder for her," Chloe finished, a note of finality in her whisper. The cold that traveled up my spine had nothing to do with the condensation on the glass. It was a deep, marrow-level chill. I looked down at the tray. I had sliced the lemons thinly. I had added a sprig of mint from the garden. My hands had performed the familiar maternal ritual while my son and his wife, in the room I had made up for them, discussed my departure as a logistical hurdle. My death was a transaction to them, an inconvenience to be managed. I did not make a sound. I turned, my slippers silent on the runner, and walked back down the stairs. Each step was mechanical. I carried the tray to the kitchen and set it on the counter. The clink of the pitcher on the granite was abnormally loud. I stood there, my palms flat on the cool surface, and stared out the window at my garden. The twilight was softening the edges of the hydrangeas. I had planted those. The sound of their footsteps on the stairs, their voices now raised in normal conversation, acted like a switch. I moved. I poured the lemonade into 2 glasses. I arranged coasters on a small tray. My face arranged itself into its usual lines. "There you are," Marcus said, smiling as he entered the kitchen. He came over and kissed my cheek. His cheek was warm. "Smells good, need help." "Everything is under control," I said. My voice did not waver. It was my librarian's voice, pleasant and final. I handed him his glass. Chloe took hers with a bright smile. "You always think of everything, Ellie. This is so sweet." I looked at her. I saw the calculation behind her eyes. I saw the future she had mapped out in that upstairs room, a future that required my absence. I saw it as clearly as if she had drawn the blueprint on my kitchen table. "It's no trouble," I said. The dinner passed. I served the roasted chicken and vegetables. I asked about Chloe's work. I listened to Marcus talk about a project. I nodded and made small sounds of acknowledgement. All the while, a separate channel of thought was running, clear and cold and silent. I observed them. The way Marcus cut his food with quick, efficient strokes. The way Chloe complimented the meal while her eyes flicked around the room, assessing the crown molding, the space. They were already measuring. They were already counting. After they left, with hugs and promises to call soon, I locked the door. I methodically cleaned the kitchen. I washed each dish by hand, feeling the heat of the water, the texture of the porcelain. The physical reality of the objects was an anchor. This was my house. These were my things. The life I had built within these walls was not a placeholder for their ambition. I did not sleep. I sat in the living room in the dark. The streetlight cast long shadows through the windows. The house felt different. The photographs on the mantel, Marcus as a boy, my late husband, Robert, smiling, seemed like artifacts from a story I had misunderstood. I had looked at them and seen love, continuity, legacy. They had looked at them and seen sentimentality, clutter, a narrative to be ended. I thought of the word gone, Chloe had said. Once she's gone. It was a soft, clean word. It hid the ugly truth. It meant a coffin. It meant silence in this room. It meant a lockbox at the lawyer's office being opened, and their faces, not grief-stricken but eager as the keys were handed over. The hurt was a vast, hollow space inside my chest. But by the time the first gray light of dawn touched the windows, that hollow space had begun to fill with something else. It was a solid, weighty substance. It was not hot anger. It was a cold, pure resolve. I had spent a lifetime being careful, being kind, being the steady one. I had defined myself through my care for others, my son, my husband, my patrons at the library. That care had been my language. I realized now they had not spoken it. They had seen it as a dialect of weakness, a language of compliance. As the sun fully rose, spilling light across the floorboards I had polished for decades, I made a decision. I would stop speaking that old language. I would learn a new one, the language of deeds, the language of paper and law, the language that did not ask but stated, that did not hope but secured. I stood up. My joints were stiff from the long night in the chair. I walked to the hall mirror and looked at myself. A woman in her late 60s with gray curls and tired eyes wearing a rumpled housecoat. I saw the person they saw, a kind, fatting woman nearing the end of her story. I held my own gaze. I saw someone else, someone who was just beginning. The tray from last night was still on the kitchen counter. I picked up the glass pitcher, now empty. I carried it to the sink. I did not pour the leftover liquid down the drain. Instead, I lifted it and poured the entire contents onto the floor. The lemonade and melted ice spread in a shallow, sticky pool across the tiles. It was a pointless, small act, but it was mine. I was not cleaning up after them anymore. Not their mess, and certainly not the mess of my own life they were so eager to tidy away. I stepped around the puddle. I went upstairs to dress. I would choose my clothes with care. I had an important call to make. I left the spilled lemonade on the floor. It was a small, silent rebellion, a tangible sign that the order of things had been broken. I walked up the stairs, each step a conscious movement away from the woman who would have rushed for a mop. In my bedroom, I opened the closet. I bypassed my usual soft sweaters and comfortable slacks. My fingers found a linen sheath dress, a deep navy blue. I had worn it to Robert's retirement dinner. It was elegant, authoritative. I put it on. I styled my curls with more care than I had in months. I applied a subtle lipstick. I looked at my reflection. I did not see a mother. I saw a client. The kitchen phone sat on its cradle on the wall. The sticky pool had begun to seep into the grout. I stepped over it and picked up the receiver. My address book was in a drawer. I found the number for Jenkins and Associates. My finger dialed the numbers with a steady pressure I did not feel internally. Jenkins and Associates, how may I direct your call? The voice was young, efficient. Alina Hawthorne for Ms. Lorraine Jenkins, please. It is urgent. One moment, Ms. Hawthorne. I waited. The morning sun was bright on the puddle. It looked foolish now, a childish stain, but it had served its purpose. Alina, Lorraine Jenkins, it's been a while, is everything all right? Her voice was warm, professional. She had handled Robert's will. She had a kind, no-nonsense manner. Lorraine, thank you for taking my call. Everything is not all right. I need to review my estate planning documents, all of them. My will, the deed to the house, any powers of attorney. I need to understand my complete legal position. I kept my voice level, devoid of the tremor that wanted to enter it. There was a brief pause on the line. I could hear the shift in her attention. I see, of course. This is a prudent step at any time. Would you like to schedule a consultation? I would like to schedule it as soon as possible. Today, if you have an opening. Another pause, longer this time. Papers rustled. I have a cancellation at 2 o'clock this afternoon. Would that work? It would. I will be there. Excellent. I'll pull your file now. Alina, is there anything specific, any immediate concern you'd like to mention? I looked at the lemonade stain. I have become aware of a potential conflict of interest regarding my assets. I wish to remove all ambiguity about my intentions. I want my legacy to be directed precisely where I choose, without question or contest. Her voice became sharper, more focused. Understood. We will discuss mechanisms to ensure that. See you at 2. I hung up the phone. The action felt decisive. I had set a process in motion. Now I had to prepare. I got the mop and bucket from the utility closet. I cleaned the floor thoroughly. The act was no longer one of servitude, but of preparation. I was clearing the space for what came next. I made a pot of strong tea and took it to the dining room table. From the antique secretary in the corner, I retrieved a leather-bound folder. It contained all my important papers. The mortgage discharge document proving the house was free and clear. The title, Robert's death certificate, my own will. I spread them out on the polished wood. I read my will. It was simple, dated 5 years ago. It left my entire estate in its entirety to Marcus. It named him as the executor. There was a standard clause about per stirp's distribution, meaning if he predeceased me, it would go to his children. There were no other beneficiaries, no charities, no friends. I had seen it as an act of love, the natural order. Now I saw it as a single point of failure. I had built a life of complexity and care, and I had funneled its entire value into one person. A person who saw it as a stepping stone. I made notes on a legal pad. Questions for Lorraine. Can I change the executor? What is required to amend a will? Can I place the house in a trust? What are the implications? What powers does a power of attorney grant, and who holds mine? I wrote in my clear librarian script. The questions were my armor. At 1 o'clock, I put the papers back in the folder. I collected my purse, my keys, my notepad. I locked the front door behind me. The drive to Lorraine's office was familiar. The law firm was in a quiet brick building downtown. I parked in the visitor lot. My hands were steady on the steering wheel. The reception area was cool and quiet. A water feature bubbled softly in the corner. I gave my name. Ms. Jenkins is expecting you. Right this way. I was led to a corner office with a view of mature oaks. Lorraine stood up from behind a large, tidy desk. She was a woman in her 50s, with intelligent eyes and a firm handshake. Eleanor, please sit. Can I get you some water, coffee? No, thank you. I'm fine. I took the chair opposite her. I placed my leather folder on the edge of her desk. She sat, opening a thick file with my name on the tab. So, you said you wanted to review everything with an eye toward clarity and preventing contest. Let's start with the foundational element, the house. It's in your name alone with a clear title. Correct. Yes, the mortgage was paid off 12 years ago. Good, that gives you maximum flexibility. Your current will bequeaths it directly to your son, Marcus. As your sole heir, he would inherit everything, the house, its contents, all financial accounts upon your passing. He is also named executor, which means he would manage the process. She looked up at me. You wish to change this. I wish to change all of it. I met her gaze. I do not want Marcus to have uncontrolled access to the house or the proceeds from it. I do not want him as the executor. I want the asset redirected. Lorraine nodded, making a note. There are several ways to achieve that. The most straightforward is to execute a new will. You can name a different executor, a trusted friend, a professional fiduciary, or my firm. You can bequeath the house to a charity or instruct that it be sold upon your death with the proceeds going to a beneficiary of your choice. That removes it from the estate's direct assets. What would prevent him from challenging the new will, claiming I was not of sound mind? I asked the question directly. Competency is a common ground for challenge, she said, her tone matter of fact. The best defense is a clear paper trail. We will document this meeting. I will make notes on my observations of your clarity and intent. We can also have a doctor's assessment if you wish, though at this stage it may not be necessary. The fact that you are here, asking these specific questions, demonstrates foresight and understanding. Another layer of protection is a revocable living trust. She explained the concept. The house could be transferred into a trust, with me as the trustee and beneficiary for my lifetime. I would control it completely. Upon my death, a successor trustee, not Marcus, would follow my instructions. Sell the property and distribute the funds as I directed in the trust documents. A trust, she explained, is generally harder and more expensive to challenge than a will. It operates outside of probate court. It sounds like what I need, I said. I want the house to be sold. I want the money to go to specific causes, not to him. And the contents, personal effects. I thought of the photographs, the books, the small heirlooms, the things they had called old furniture. I will make a separate list for personal bequests. The remainder can be sold or donated. I do not want a vague, everything to Marcus clause. I want specificity. Lorraine allowed a small, approving smile. Specificity is the enemy of litigation. Good. Now, powers of attorney. You currently have a financial power of attorney and a healthcare directive. Who are the agents? I felt a cold knot in my stomach. Marcus, for both. You wish to change those as well. Immediately. We can draft new documents today. You can name new agents. Do you have someone in mind? I did not hesitate. For healthcare, my friend Rosalind Carter. For financial, I would like to name your firm as a professional agent, with Rosalind as a secondary. That is a very secure arrangement, Lorraine said. She began writing in earnest. This severs the legal authority he has to make decisions for you if you become incapacitated. It is a critical step. For the next hour, we worked. We outlined the new will. We discussed charitable beneficiaries. I named a local organization that provided housing support for senior women and the literacy fund at the public library where I had worked. We initiated the paperwork for the revocable trust. We drafted the new powers of attorney. I will have my assistant prepare the final documents for your signature. We can schedule a signing appointment later this week. Once signed and notarized, they will be effective. You should also inform your bank and healthcare providers of the change in your powers of attorney. I stood up. The weight in my chest had not lessened, but it had changed. It was no longer the leaden weight of betrayal. It was the solid weight of granite resolve. Thank you, Lorraine. You are taking control of your legacy, Alina. That is always the right decision. She walked me to the door. I'll call you when the documents are ready. I drove home. The house was silent. It was still my house. But now it was also a legal entity, an asset to be managed according to my instructions. I went to the kitchen. The floor was clean, no trace of the lemonade. I put the kettle on. I had taken the first, irreversible step. The paperwork would follow. And then I would have to inform Marcus that the future he had so casually planned had just been legally revoked. The signed documents rested in the center of my dining table, a neat stack of white and blue paper. Lorraine's assistant had delivered them that morning. My signature, witnessed and notarized, was now on every page. The revocable living trust was established. The house, legally and quietly, no longer belonged solely to Alina Hawthorne. It was now the principal asset of the Hawthorne Legacy Trust. I was the trustee. I was the lifetime beneficiary. The terms upon my death were explicit and unchangeable by anyone but me, while I lived. Lorraine had called after the courier left. Alina, it's done. The deed has been recorded with the county. The trust is active. The new will and powers of attorney are in our vault and have been filed with the relevant institutions. You should receive confirmations from your bank and healthcare network within the week. Thank you, Lorraine. The successor trustee, as you designated, is my firm. The charitable beneficiaries are named. The instructions for the sale of the property and distribution of proceeds are clear. Is there anything else you need from me at this point? I looked at the papers. They were a blueprint for a future that excluded Marcus's greed. I believe that covers the legal architecture. The next step is informing the interested parties. That, she said, her voice careful, is a personal matter. But from a legal standpoint, you are on solid ground. The documents are airtight. After hanging up, I did not put the copies away immediately. I left them on the table. They were a tangible fact. I made a cup of tea and sat with them. The language was dense, full of whereas and heretofore and per stirps. But the intent was crystalline. My legacy would fund a safe housing initiative for older women facing insecurity. It would endow a literacy program for children. It would not fund a luxury condo or a speculative investment for Marcus and Chloe. The phone rang again. I let it go to the machine. "Hi, Mom, it's Marcus." His voice was cheerful, a performance of normalcy. "Just checking in. Chloe and I were thinking maybe we could stop by this weekend. Bring some takeout, save you the cooking. We'd love to see you." I watched the machine's red light blink. I picked up the receiver. "Marcus, that sounds nice." My voice was pleasant, identical to the one I had used my whole life. "Great, how's Sunday, around 6? "Sunday at 6 is perfect," I said. "I'll look forward to it." "Awesome. We'll bring that Thai place you like. Everything okay there? You sound a little tired." "I'm quite well, just a bit of gardening. The hydrangeas need attention." "Don't overdo it, Mom. Let us know if you need any help with the heavy stuff." The concern was a veneer. It was the same tone he had used when suggesting a managed community. "I'll manage. See you Sunday." I placed the receiver back in its cradle. The invitation was issued. The stage was set. I had 3 days. I spent those days in a state of purposeful calm. I tended the garden not as an escape, but as a reaffirmation of what I was protecting. I weeded, I pruned, I watered. The physical labor grounded me. I went to the grocery store and bought ingredients for a meal. Not just any meal. I bought a small, perfect rib roast, fresh asparagus, potatoes for roasting. I selected a bottle of red wine. I would cook a Sunday dinner one final time. It would be an impeccable performance, and it would be the last one they ever received from me. On Saturday, I visited the community center. I had not seen Rosalind since before the whisper in the hallway. I found her in the art room, painting a vibrant, abstract landscape. "Ellie, you've been a ghost." She put her brush down and wiped her hands on a cloth. Her eyes, sharp and kind, scanned my face. "What's going on?" We took our coffee to a quiet corner of the lounge. I told her. I did not tell her about the legal documents, not yet. I told her what I had overheard. The words, "once she's gone." The calculation. The planned erasure of my life for their convenience. Rosalind listened without interruption. Her face hardened. When I finished, she reached over and gripped my hand. Her fingers were stained with cobalt blue. "The little bastard," she said, her voice low and fierce. "The entitled, greedy little bastard." "I'm handling it," I said. "How?" "Legally, permanently. He will not get the house. He will not get to decide a thing about my life, now or later." A slow smile spread across Rosalind's face. It was not a happy smile. It was a smile of grim approval. "Good. What do you need from me?" "You are my healthcare agent now. Lorraine Jenkins is the financial trustee. I have removed him from all decision-making authority. Consider it done. I'll carry your living will in my purse with my grocery list." She squeezed my hand again. "And the rest. He just gets to walk away thinking he's still the golden boy." "No," I said. "He does not. They are coming for dinner tomorrow. I will inform them." Rosalind leaned back, her artist's eyes assessing me. "You're going to tell them to their faces. You're going to watch them realize it's gone." "Yes." "Do you want me to come? For moral support. I can be a terrifying presence when required." I shook my head. "This is between them and me, but thank you. Afterwards, I may need a friend who understands." "You have one. You call me the minute they leave, no matter the hour." That evening, I set the dining table. I used the good china, the crystal water glasses, the heavy silver that had been my mother's. I polished each piece until it shone. I placed the documents Lorraine had given me, a simplified summary letter and a copy of the trust's first page with the key provisions highlighted, into a plain white letter-sized envelope. I did not seal it. I left it on the sideboard, leaning against the wall. On Sunday morning, I prepared the food. The roast was seasoned and sat in the refrigerator. The potatoes were peeled. The table was set. The envelope waited. At 5:30, I went upstairs and changed into the same navy dress I had worn to the lawyer's office. I fixed my hair. I applied lipstick. I looked at myself in the mirror. My heart was a steady, cold drumbeat in my chest. There was no anxiety, only a focused anticipation. I was not a victim preparing for a confrontation. I was an executor preparing to execute a clause. At 6 o'clock precisely, headlights swept across the front window. The car doors shut. Two cheerful voices approached the porch. The doorbell rang. I took a slow breath. I walked to the front door and opened it. Marcus stood there, holding a bag of takeout containers. Chloe was beside him, holding a bottle of wine. "Mom, you look great," Marcus said, leaning in to kiss my cheek. "Ellie, this is for you," Chloe said, handing me the wine. "We thought forget the tie, let's just enjoy your company." I smiled. It was a perfect practice smile. "How thoughtful, come in. I'm afraid I've already cooked, though. I hope you still have room." Their faces faltered for just a second, seeing the formal table through the archway. "Oh, you didn't have to go to all that trouble," Chloe said, recovering quickly. "It was no trouble," I said, taking the bag from Marcus. "Please, sit down. I'll just put these in the kitchen. Dinner is ready." I placed their bottle of wine and the takeout bag on the kitchen counter. The aromas of ginger and lemongrass from the Thai food clashed with the richer scent of the roasting meat from the oven. I left them there, unopened. I carried the plated roast, resting properly, to the dining table. Marcus and Chloe were seated, their postures slightly stiff in the formal setting. "This looks incredible, Mom," Marcus said, his eyes following the platter. "You really went all out." "It's a special occasion," I said, setting the platter on the trivet. I brought out the roasted potatoes and the asparagus. I took my seat at the head of the table. "What's the occasion?" Chloe asked, unfolding her linen napkin with careful fingers. "The completion of some important matters," I said. I picked up the carving knife and fork. The silver was cool and familiar in my hands. "How have you both been? Work progressing, Marcus?" He launched into an update about his latest project, a commercial development on the south side. He used words like square footage and pre-leasing and return on investment. I sliced the meat, placing perfect, pink-centered portions on their plates. I listened. I nodded at appropriate intervals. I passed the serving dishes. Chloe chimed in about her interior design client, a couple building a forever home. "They want everything just so," she said, taking a sip of the wine I had poured. "It's a legacy project for them." "A legacy project," I repeated, serving myself a single potato. "How meaningful for them." "Exactly," she said, missing the ice in my tone. "It's all about creating something that lasts, that you can pass down." I cut a piece of my roast. It was cooked perfectly. "And do they have children to pass it down to?" "Two, a boy and a girl, teenagers." Chloe took another bite. "The house is really for them in the long run." "I see," I said. "So the children are aware of this legacy. They appreciate the intention." Marcus chuckled, a dry sound. "Teenagers, they just want bigger bedrooms and a home theater. The legacy stuff comes later when they're older and understand value." "Understanding value seems to be a recurring theme," I said. The conversation lulled for a moment, filled only with the sound of cutlery on china. I watched them eat the food I had prepared. Marcus ate quickly, efficiently, as if fueling himself for the next task. Chloe ate more delicately, but her eyes continued their subtle inventory of the room. The crystal decanter on the sideboard, the landscape painting on the wall, the quality of the chair fabric. "This china is so beautiful, Ellie," she said. "Is it part of a set?" "It was my mother's. There are 48 pieces, service for 12. "That's a lot to store," Marcus said, not looking up from his plate. "These big sets, they're not really practical for modern life." "Perhaps not," I agreed, "but they have historical value to me." Of course," he said quickly, hearing a potential slight. "Sentimental value is important too. It's just sometimes you have to balance that with practicality. Downsize, streamline." "Is that what you and Chloe are doing? Streamlining?" I asked. He shifted in his seat. "Thinking about it, the condo feels a bit transient. We're at a stage where we should be putting down roots, building real equity. A house with land is a smarter investment long-term." "A house like this one," I said. It was not a question. He glanced at me, a flicker of assessment in his eyes. "Well, yeah, I mean, this is a prime example. Solid construction, mature neighborhood paid off. It's the kind of asset that endures." "It has endured my lifetime," I said. "It sheltered my family. It holds my history. That is a different kind of equity. Chloe smiled, a tight, conciliatory curve of her lips. And it's wonderful that you have that, Ellie. Really. Not everyone is so lucky to have such a stable home. We just worry about you here alone with all the upkeep. Those stairs can be treacherous. The stairs are fine, I said. I have them inspected annually. I have a handyman for the gutters and the heavier yard work. I am not helpless. No one's saying you're helpless, Mom, Marcus said, his tone shifting to one of gentle, patronizing concern. We just think about your safety, your peace of mind. A nice, modern single level in one of those new adult communities. They have activities, people your own age, security. You'd have less to worry about. What makes you think I am worried? I asked, my voice calm. I am perfectly at peace here. This house does not worry me. It comforts me. They exchanged a quick look, a silent communication of frustration. The script was not being followed. I was not voicing the anxieties they had assigned to me. We just want what's best for you, Chloe said, the phrase landing like a rehearsed line. I know you do, I said, and I appreciate the concern. It is illuminating. The main course was finished. I stood and began to clear the plates. Chloe jumped up to help. Let me, Ellie, you've done enough. Thank you, dear. I allowed her to take the plates. She carried them to the kitchen. I heard the slight pause as she saw their untouched Thai food still sitting on the counter. She returned empty-handed. So, Marcus said, leaning back in his chair, you mentioned important matters were completed. Everything okay with the house? Taxes, insurance? All in order, I said. The matters were of a more personal, legal nature, estate planning. The air in the room changed. It became still, charged. Marcus's posture straightened. Chloe, who had been about to sit back down, froze slightly. Estate planning, Marcus asked, his voice carefully neutral. That's prudent. Did you need some help with that? I could recommend someone. I have an excellent lawyer, Lorraine Jenkins. She handled your father's affairs. Oh, right, good, he nodded. It's good to keep those things updated. Did you make any changes? I looked at him. I held his gaze for a count of 3. I did. I found it necessary to make several significant changes, to reflect current realities. The color drained from his face, just a shade. Chloe's smile was completely gone. Current realities, she echoed. Yes, one's perspective can shift. One realizes that legacy is not a passive inheritance. It is an active choice. I stood up again. Now, would anyone care for coffee, or shall we move directly to the matter at hand? I did not wait for an answer. I walked to the sideboard. I picked up the plain white envelope. I turned and faced them, holding it in both hands. The room was silent. The grandfather clock in the hall ticked once, twice. Dinner was lovely, Mom, Marcus said, his voice strained. But what's that? This, I said, is a summary of the changes I mentioned, the new blueprint, as it were. I placed the envelope on the table in front of my empty chair. I did not hand it to him. I let it sit there, a white rectangle on the dark wood. I think you should read it, both of you. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The envelope lay between us like a physical barrier. Marcus stared at it, then at me. His expression was a struggle between confusion and a dawning, cold suspicion. Chloe's hand had gone to her throat, a nervous gesture. What is this, Mom? Marcus asked again, his voice tighter. The documentation, I said. As I said, it outlines the new structure of my estate. I thought you should be informed. He reached for the envelope slowly, as if it might be hot. He pulled out the few sheets of paper. He scanned the top page, the summary letter from Lorraine Jenkins. His eyes moved quickly over the formal letterhead, the paragraphs of clear legalese summary. I watched his face. I saw the exact moment his brain deciphered the meaning. His pupils dilated. His lips parted slightly. The color that had returned to his cheeks after his initial shock drained away again, leaving a waxy pallor. This says, he couldn't form the sentence. Chloe leaned over, her eyes racing across the page. She made a small, sharp sound like a gasp choked back. A trust. You put the house in an asterisk trust. The Hawthorne Legacy Trust, yes, I confirmed, my hands resting on the back of my chair. Marcus flipped to the next page, the highlighted excerpt from the trust agreement. His finger traced the lines. Successor trustee, Jenkins and Associates, upon the death of the grantor, the property shall be sold, the proceeds distributed to. His voice failed. He looked up, his eyes wide with disbelief. The Women's Haven Project, the Public Library Literacy Fund, what is this? Those are the charitable beneficiaries of the trust, I said, my tone even, instructive. The house will be sold. The money will go to them, not to you. The words hung in the air, brutal in their clarity. Chloe's mouth was open. You're giving our inheritance to charity asterisk. It was never your inheritance, I said. It is my asset, my house. I'm deciding its fate. Marcus threw the papers down on the table. They slid and one fluttered to the floor. This is insane. This is some kind of mistake. Who put you up to this? That lawyer? Did she scare you into this? He was standing now, his chair scraping loudly on the hardwood. No one put me up to anything, Marcus. I engaged a lawyer. I gave her instructions. She followed them. These are my wishes. Your wishes, he exploded, his voice rising. Your wishes were to take care of your family, to pass on what you and Dad built. This house, everything in it, it's mine asterisk. It's always been understood. Understood by whom? I asked, tilting my head. I never signed a contract promising it to you. I never told you it was yours, you assumed. It's the natural order of things, he shouted. A son inherits from his parents. What are you going to leave it all to some stranger? Some charity so they can put a plaque with your name on a bench? That would be preferable to leaving it to someone who sees it as a windfall to be collected upon my death, I said, my voice dropping, becoming colder. He flinched as if struck. Chloe found her voice high and panicked. Ellie, please, you have to see reason. This is family wealth. It should stay in the family. Maybe we could use some of it to help you now, for your care. We could set something up, but giving it all away, it's spiteful, it's irrational. It is neither. It is deliberate. It is a choice made with full mental capacity, documented by my attorney. It is the definition of rational estate planning. Marcus braced his hands on the table, leaning toward me. Mom, listen to yourself. You sound like a robot. This isn't you. You're kind. You're generous. This is cruel. You're cutting me out, your only son. For the first time that evening, I felt a crack in my icy calm. Not of doubt, but of a sharp, painful clarity. You speak of cruelty, Marcus. Let us discuss cruelty. Cruelty is a son, standing in a guest room of his mother's home, discussing her death as a financial opportunity. Cruelty is plotting to guide her out of her own house, to list it, to parcel out her life for your gain. You and Chloe spoke of me as a problem to be solved. Once she's gone. That was the phrase, I believe. The silence that followed was absolute. It was a vacuum. All the sound was sucked out of the room. Marcus's face went from pale to a mottled red. His eyes bulged. Chloe took a step backward, her hand flying to her mouth. You heard that, Marcus whispered, the anger evaporating into stunned horror. I was bringing you lemonade, I said, the memory crisp and cold. The door was ajar. I heard every word. I heard you agree that this house was a 7-figure asset just sitting here. I heard you agree that I would be happier in a managed community, that you needed to guide me. I heard you both map out the end of my life for your convenience. Chloe made a small, whimpering noise. Ellie, it wasn't like that. We were just talking, brainstorming. You were planning, I corrected her. You were planning the disposal of my life. You did not see a person. You saw an obstacle between you and an asset you felt entitled to. Marcus straightened up, his initial shock curdling back into a defensive, righteous anger. So this is your revenge? Because of a private conversation, we were stressed. We were talking about our future. You were talking about a future that required my absence, I said. You made it clear that my presence in my own home was an inconvenience, so I have removed that inconvenience for you. You no longer need to wait. You no longer need to guide me. The matter is settled. The house will never be yours. You are free to build your future without factoring in my death. He stared at me, his breath coming in short gasps. I saw the calculations firing behind his eyes, the desperate search for a lever, for a weakness. The Loving Son Act was gone. The Concerned Citizen Act was gone. What remained was raw, thwarted entitlement. "You can't do this," he said, his voice low and threatening. "It is already done. The trust is established and recorded. The will is updated. Your powers of attorney are revoked. It is irreversible." "We'll challenge it," Chloe burst out. "We'll say you were coerced. You're not in your right mind. A judge will see this for what it is, a vindictive old woman lashing out." I looked at her, at the fear and rage twisting her features. "You are welcome to try. My attorney has a full file documenting my lucidity. My doctor will confirm my competency. The challenge will be long, public, and expensive. And you will lose. All you will achieve is the spectacle of your own greed, and you will never set foot in this house again." My words, spoken so quietly, seemed to physically push them back. Marcus looked from my face to the hated papers on the table, to the room that was no longer his promised land. I saw the moment the fight drained out of him, replaced by a hollow, bewildered defeat. He had never considered that I might fight back. He had never imagined I had the will or the means. The hollow defeat in Marcus's eyes lasted only seconds. It was too foreign, too unacceptable. It was quickly flooded by a hotter, more familiar emotion: rage. The defeat was not a surrender, it was the pause before the explosion. "You listened," he said, his voice a low, vibrating thing. "You stood outside a door and eavesdropped on a private conversation." "I was bringing you a refreshment," I repeated, my tone unchanged. "You were not whispering sweet nothings. You were conducting a business meeting about my assets. The venue was poor." "It was a asterisk private conversation," he shouted, the volume making Chloe jump. "You had no right." "I had every right to be in the hallway of my own home. You had no right to plan the liquidation of my life. We have different definitions of rights, it seems." He took a step toward me, around the table. His hands were clenched into fists at his sides. "This is because of Dad, isn't it? You've never gotten over it. You're punishing me because I'm not him. Because I'm living my life, not the one you had scripted for me." The accusation was so far from the truth it was almost absurd. It was a projectile, hurled to see what it might hit. "This has nothing to do with your father. This has to do with you, with your choices, with your words." My choices to build a life, to want security for my family. You're sitting on a gold mine doing nothing with it, letting it rot around you while you play in the dirt with your flowers. We could have asterisk used that money. We have plans, debts, a future. Finally it was out, the raw, unvarnished truth. The gold mine, the rotting asset, my life is a hobby. "So it is about the money," I said. "Not my safety, not my peace of mind, not my happiness in a managed community. It is about converting my home into capital for your plans." "It's about legacy," he roared, spit flying from his lips. "A legacy you're throwing away on strangers. You'd rather give it to some homeless women's shelter than to your own flesh and blood. Those strangers will use the money for shelter, for safety, for education. What would you use it for, Marcus? To pay debts you shouldn't have, to buy a bigger investment property, to fund a lifestyle you haven't earned." He was shaking now, a tremor of pure fury. "I have earned it. I'm your son. I put up with a lifetime of your quiet little judgments, your disappointed sighs, your perfect librarian's order. I played the good son. And this is my reward, to be disinherited because of one conversation." "It was not one conversation," I said, my voice cutting through his tirade. "It was a revelation. It was the lens through which every previous conversation, every suggestion about my living situation, every appraisal of this house's value, suddenly came into focus. It was the truth I was not meant to hear, and having heard it, I could not unhear it. My eyes could not unsee the strangers you had become." Chloe found her voice, a shrill counterpoint to his roar. "You're a spiteful old woman. You're holding a single moment over our heads forever. We care about you. We worry about you. And you repay that by destroying our future." I turned my gaze to her. "You do not care about me. You care about what I represent, an obstacle that is also an ATM. Your worry is that I might live too long or that I might give the money to someone else. Your panic now proves it." "We'll fight this," Marcus said again, but the threat was weaker now, blunted by my calm. "We'll get lawyers. We'll prove you're not competent. Everyone will see you've gone off the deep end. What kind of mother does this to her only child? A mother who is awake, I said. A mother who is no longer sleeping through her own life, waiting for you to decide it's over. He stared at me, panting slightly. The social veneer, the charm, the practiced concern, all of it was gone, stripped away by shock and greed, and now by a seething, impotent hatred. I saw my son, but I saw a stranger wearing his face. A man who believed the world owed him, beginning with me. "Get out," I said. The words were quiet, but they carried in the silent room. "What?" "Get out of my house, now." "You can't throw me out," he sneered. "It is my house. I am ordering you to leave. If you do not, I will call the police and have you removed for trespassing. I suggest you go before that becomes part of the public record you seem so concerned about." Chloe grabbed his arm. "Marcus, come on, let's go. She's not right. Let's just go." He shook her off but took a step backward toward the hall. His eyes never left mine. They were filled with a promise of continued war. "This isn't over. You think you're so clever with your trusts and your lawyers. You'll see. You'll be alone. You'll die alone in this house, and then we'll see who gets the last laugh." "I would rather die alone than live knowing I funded my own dismissal," I said. "The door is behind you." He snatched the envelope and the scattered papers from the table, crumpling them in his fist. He turned and strode out of the dining room. Chloe scurried after him, throwing one last, terrified look over her shoulder. I did not follow them. I stood by the table, listening to the sounds of their departure. The harsh whisper of argument in the foyer, the yank of the front door, the slam that shook the frame. Then silence. It was a different silence than before. It was not the silence of shock or of planning. It was the silence after a storm has passed. A clean, exhausted quiet. I looked at the ruined dinner table. The half-eaten food on their plates was congealing. The beautiful roast was cold on its platter. My own plate was nearly untouched. I began to clear the table. I stacked the dishes with methodical care. I carried them to the kitchen. I scraped the food into the compost bin. I did not feel triumphant. I did not feel victorious. I felt drained and hollow and terribly, terribly sad. But beneath the sadness, there was a solid floor, a foundation of resolve that the storm could not crack. I washed the dishes by hand. The hot water was a comfort. The act of cleaning, of restoring order, was necessary. When the kitchen was clean, I returned to the dining room. I wiped the table. I put the crystal glasses away. I folded the linen napkins. I walked to the front window and peered through the curtains. Their car was gone. The street was dark and empty. My hand went to the phone. I dialed Rosalind's number. She answered on the second ring. "It's done," I said, my voice sounding thin to my own ears. "Are you all right?" she asked immediately. "I will be. They are gone." How did he take it? As expected, with rage, with accusations. He threatened to challenge my competence. Rosalind made a dismissive sound. "Let him try. He'll waste a lot of money and look like a fool. Where are you now?" "In the dining room, cleaning up." "Open a bottle of wine. Not the one they brought. A good one. I'm coming over." "You don't have to." "I'm already putting on my shoes. 20 minutes. Don't argue." She hung up. I put the phone down. I went to the small wine cabinet and selected a bottle of Cabernet that Robert had been saving for a special occasion. I opened it. I poured a glass. I did not drink it. I held the stem and looked at the deep red liquid. The confrontation was over. The truth was out. The legal lines were drawn. The battle, I knew, might not be over. Marcus's threat was not empty. He would likely try something. But the fortress was built. The walls were up. He was on the outside. I took a sip of the wine. It was rich and complex. I sat down at the clean, empty dining table in the quiet house that was now, irrevocably and completely, mine. Rosalind arrived within the promised 20 minutes. She let herself in with the key I had given her years before, calling out a hello as she entered. She found me still sitting at the dining table, the glass of wine untouched before me. She took in the scene, the spotless table, the single glass, my composed face, and her expression softened from concern to something like pride. You look like you just presided over a board meeting that ended in a hostile takeover, she said, pulling out the chair next to mine and sitting down. She had brought a container of what smelled like her famous chicken soup. She placed it on the table. It felt like one, I said. My voice sounded normal again. The thinness was gone. Tell me everything. Don't leave out a single hissed word or dramatic flourish. I recounted the evening. The meal, the probing questions about downsizing, the moment I placed the envelope on the table. I repeated their reactions as accurately as I could. The stunned disbelief, the rapid calculations, the panic, and finally, the rage. I told her about Marcus's shouting, his accusations of spite and insanity. I told her about Chloe's shrill threat to challenge my competence. Rosalind listened, nodding occasionally, her eyes sharp. When I got to the part where I repeated the words I had overheard, "Once she's gone," she reached over and covered my hand with hers. "And you told him you heard." I did. That was when the mask came off completely. The concerned son vanished. What was left was just anger, a child whose toy had been taken away. "Good," Rosalind said firmly. "Let him be angry, let him choke on it. He showed you exactly who he is. Believe him." We were quiet for a moment. The house felt different with her in it. It felt sheltered, understood. "He said he would fight it," I said. "He'll try. He'll find a lawyer who will take his money and tell him he has a case. They'll talk about undue influence, lack of capacity. Lorraine will swat them away like flies. It will cost him thousands, and he'll get nothing but a lesson in humility, though I doubt he'll learn it." I knew she was right, but the prospect of a legal battle, however futile, was a dark cloud on the horizon. "It's the ugliness of it," I said. "The public ugliness. He's my son. The idea of us facing each other in a courtroom. He stopped being your son the moment he started calculating the profit on your death," Rosalind said, her voice gentle but unyielding. "He's now a legal adversary. You have to see him that way, for your own protection." The doorbell rang. We both froze. Rosalind's eyes locked with mine. "Are you expecting anyone?" "No." It rang again, a long, insistent press. "Don't answer it," she said. But I was already standing. If it's him, I need to face him. Ending it at the door with a witness is better than letting him think he can ambush me alone later. I walked to the front hall. Rosalind followed, standing a few feet behind me in the archway to the living room, a silent sentinel. I looked through the peephole. Marcus stood on the porch alone. His hair was disheveled, his jacket misbuttoned. In the yellow porch light, his face was pale and set. I unlocked the door and opened it, but I did not open the storm door. A pane of glass and metal mesh stood between us. "Marcus." "Mom, we need to talk," without shouting. His voice was strained, artificially calm. "We said everything that needed saying." "No, we didn't. I was upset. I said things I didn't mean. Please, just open the door. Let me come in and we can talk like rational adults." I did not move. "We can talk like this." He glanced past me, saw Rosalind, and his jaw tightened. "This is a family matter. Can we have some privacy?" "Rosalind is family," I said. "She stays. Say what you came to say." He took a deep breath, visibly trying to assemble his composure. The performance of the contrite son was being resurrected, but it was cracked, transparent. "Look, I am sorry for what you heard. It was a stupid, private conversation. It was venting. It wasn't our real feelings. Chloe and I were under a lot of pressure, financially. We saw an easy solution, and we talked about it in a crude way. We never meant to hurt you. We love you." He waited. I said nothing. "This trust, this disinheritance, it's a drastic overreaction. You're cutting me off because of one bad moment. That's not fair. That's not the mother I know. The mother I know is forgiving, is generous." Still, I remained silent, letting him talk, letting him reveal the shape of his new strategy. "We can fix this," he pressed on, his voice becoming more urgent. "You can undo the trust. We can go back to the old will, or we can compromise. You keep the house, of course, but we could do a reverse mortgage. You get a monthly income, you live here forever, and when you're gone, the bank settles the loan and I still get the remaining equity. It's a win-win. You get financial security now, and I get something for my future, for your grandchildren if we ever have any." There it was, the new pitch. Not an apology, but a renegotiation. My death was still the terminal point of the transaction, but now he was offering me a cut of the profits up front. I have financial security, I said. The house is paid for. My pension is sufficient. I do not need a reverse mortgage. But it could be better. You could travel, you could. Marcus, my voice cut through his. Stop. There will be no reverse mortgage. There will be no undoing of the trust. The matter is closed. The artificial calm on his face shattered. Why are you doing this to me? What did I do that was so terrible? Every son expects to inherit from his parents. That's normal. You're the one being abnormal. You're being cruel and vindictive. Is this about control? You finally have a way to control me from beyond the grave. It is about my autonomy, I said, each word distinct. It is about my right to decide what happens to the product of my life's work. You assumed that right belonged to you. You were wrong. You're sick, he hissed, his face contorting. The mask was not just slipped, it was thrown on the ground. You're a lonely, bitter old woman and you're punishing me for your own empty life. You're crazy, and everyone will see it. I'll make sure of it. You are welcome to your opinion, I said, and to any legal action you wish to waste your money on. But you are not welcome in my home. Do not come here again. Any further communication can go through my attorney. I closed the inner door. I locked it. I stood there, listening. I heard a choked sound of fury, then the heavy, stumbling sound of his footsteps leaving the porch. A car door slammed. An engine roared to life and tires squealed away from the curb. I turned around. Rosalind was still there. She didn't speak. She simply opened her arms. I walked into them and let her hold me. I did not cry. I shook, a fine, constant tremor that came from deep within, the aftershock of an earthquake. But I did not cry. He showed you, she murmured into my hair. He showed you exactly what he is. Now you never have to wonder. She was right. The final, feeble performance of remorse had lasted only minutes before the entitled, furious core was exposed again. There was no son left to mourn. There was only a stranger whose greed I had thwarted. The mask was gone, and in its absence, I found my resolve hardened into something permanent, something that could not be broken. The morning after Marcus's second departure began with ordinary sounds. The coffee maker hissed. The newspaper thumped on the front step. Birds argued in the hydrangeas outside the kitchen window. The normalcy was not a comfort. It was a tool. I used it to build a new day. Rosalind had stayed until late, talking of everything except my son. We had finished the wine. We had eaten her soup. When she left, the house did not feel empty. It felt quiet, a deliberate quiet. I drank my coffee. I read the paper. Then I dressed in practical clothes, khaki trousers, a cotton blouse, gardening shoes. I went outside. The early summer sun was warm on my shoulders. I started with the weeding. I knelt on the padded kneeler and worked my way along the border of the flower bed, pulling up the stubborn tendrils of creeping Charlie and dandelion roots. The soil was cool and damp in my fingers. The physical act required focus. It left no room for other thoughts. My mind was occupied with the identification of weed from flower, the angle of the trowel, the depth of the root. After 2 hours, the border was clean. My knees ached. My hands were dirty. I stood, brushing the soil from my trousers. The cleared earth looked expectant, ready for new growth. I felt a similar sensation within myself. I went inside and washed my hands. The phone rang. It was Lorraine Jenkins. Eleanor, good morning. I received a rather agitated call from a lawyer named Stephen Briggs about an hour ago. He represents your son. A cold clarity settled over me. I see. He made preliminary inquiries about challenging the trust and the new will. He mentioned undue influence and questions of testamentary capacity. Standard scare tactics at this stage. I informed him, in polite but unequivocal terms, that the documents were executed with all due formalities, that you were of sound mind and under no duress, and that we have a contemporaneous file nodding your clear instructions and rationale. I also reminded him that frivolous challenges can result in sanctions and the recovery of legal fees by the prevailing party. How did he respond? He blustered, said his client was deeply concerned for his mother's well-being. I suggested that if his client was concerned, he might try respectful dialogue rather than legal threats. The conversation ended shortly after. I expect they will take a few days to assess whether this is a fight they can afford, financially and reputationally. Thank you, Lorraine. My advice is to proceed with your life as planned. Their next move, if any, will be a formal letter. We will handle it. Are you still comfortable with our strategy? Completely, I said. The word felt true. Good. Then I'll expect you at 2 o'clock to sign the final, executed copies for your records. I hung up. The threat had become real, a paper enemy. It was manageable. It was a process. I was not afraid of a process. At 1:30, I changed into the navy dress again, armor for a different kind of battlefield. The drive to Lorraine's office was familiar now. The receptionist smiled and led me back immediately. Lorraine's desk held a neat stack of bound documents. The final versions, she said, sliding them toward me. Everything is recorded, filed, and active. These are your copies. I've highlighted the signature pages. I took the pen she offered. I signed my name on each indicated line. The script was firm, unwavering. Eleanor R. Hawthorne, grantor, trustee, testator. Each signature was a ratification of my own authority. When I was done, she handed me a slim folder. This is a one-page summary in plain English of the key provisions. You can show it to anyone who needs to understand the structure, like your financial advisor or Rosalind. It states the facts without room for misinterpretation. I placed it in my purse. What happens now? Now you live your life. The machinery is in place. It will do its job when the time comes without your son's hand on the lever. My firm, as successor trustee, has clear instructions. It is a closed system. A closed system, I repeated. It was a satisfying term. It implied integrity, self-containment, security. From the law office, I did not drive home. I drove to the community center. The parking lot was busy. I walked inside. The air hummed with activity, the clack of pool balls from the game room, the murmur of conversation from the lounge, the faint rhythm of music from a dance class down the hall. I found Rosalind in the bright, sunlit art studio. She was not painting today. She was at a pottery wheel, her hands covered in slick gray clay, coaxing a lump into a symmetrical cylinder. She saw me and smiled without stopping her work. Get an apron, she said. There's a free wheel next to me, or just sit and watch the magic happen, or lack thereof in my case. I fetched an apron from a hook. I did not sit at a wheel. I sat on a stool beside her, watching her hands. They were strong, capable, smeared with clay. They centered the spinning mound with a practiced ease I knew was hard-won. I signed the final papers, I said. Good. His lawyer called Lorraine, making noises about a challenge. Rosalind's hands slowed for a second, then resumed their steady pressure. Let him make noises. It's just hot air from a tiny kettle. That's what Lorraine said. She's a smart woman. Rosalind focused on the widening cylinder, her tongue between her teeth in concentration. What are you going to do with the rest of your day? I don't know. I weeded the garden. Weeding is a start, but it's about removal. You need to plant something. I watched the clay rise and turn, a form emerging from formlessness under her guidance. What should I plant? Something you want to see grow, something that has nothing to do with anyone else. A new rose, some ridiculous flamboyant dahlias, herbs for a tea you've never made. She stopped the wheel with a touch. The cylinder was lopsided, but it had character. Or don't plant a thing, just sit in the garden and read a trashy novel. The point is, it's your choice. That's the new soil, Ellie, your choice. I stayed at the center for an hour. We did not talk much. We drank bad coffee from the vending machine. I listened to two women at the next table plan a day trip to a botanical garden. I heard a man complain good-naturedly about his golf score. Life, ordinary and ongoing, swirled around me. I was not a vortex at its center. I was a participant. When I left, the late afternoon sun was softening. I drove home. I entered my house. I stood in the foyer and listened. The silence was no longer accusatory or waiting. It was peaceful. It was mine. I I took the summary page from my purse. I walked to the living room. I opened the drawer of the secretary where I kept important household papers, the appliance warranties, the roof inspection report, the tax records. I placed the single page inside. I closed the drawer. I changed out of the navy dress and into soft trousers and a sweater. I made a simple dinner for myself. I ate it at the kitchen table, reading a book from the library. The words held my attention. Later, as dusk fell, I walked from room to room. I did not see a future museum for Marcus or a potential listing for Chloe. I saw the chair where Robert used to read. I saw the shelf where Marcus's childhood trophies still stood. I saw the space where my book club met. I saw my history, not as an asset to be appraised, but as a narrative I had lived. It was over. A new chapter, blank and full of potential, was beginning. The house was no longer a legacy in waiting. It was simply my home. And for the first time since the whisper in the hallway, that thought brought not pain, but a deep, solid calm. A week passed in a pattern of quiet activity. I gardened. I attended a lecture on local birds at the community center with Rosalind. I sorted through boxes in the attic, not with urgency, but with curiosity. I found a packet of letters from my mother, a quilt I had forgotten, Marcus's elementary school report cards. I put most of it back. The past was a country I had visited, but I no longer lived there. The formal letter from Stephen Briggs, Esquire, arrived on heavy cream paper. It was addressed to me, but a copy had been sent to Lorraine Jenkins. It reiterated the grave concerns about my testamentary capacity and the suspicious timing of the estate plan changes. It demanded a full medical evaluation by a doctor of their choosing and threatened a petition to the probate court if I did not voluntarily submit to it and consider revoking the trust. I did not open it. I took it, unread, directly to the post office and mailed it to Lorraine in the pre-addressed envelope she had given me for this purpose. She called later that afternoon. "It's the expected next step," she said. "A fishing expedition. They want to see if you'll get flustered if you'll agree to their terms. My response will be a firm denial of their allegations, an offer to provide an independent medical evaluation from a mutually agreed-upon geriatric specialist, which we will control, and a reminder that continued harassment could constitute elder abuse. That should slow them down." "Do it," I said. There was no hesitation in my voice. The next day, a Saturday, I was repotting some geraniums on the back patio when the doorbell rang. I wiped my hands on a towel and walked through the house. I did not look through the peephole this time. I simply opened the inner door. Marcus stood alone again. He looked different. He was wearing jeans and an old college sweatshirt I remembered. His hair was messy. He had not shaved. He was holding a small pot of yellow chrysanthemums. The attempt at a casual, wounded appearance was so deliberate it was painful. "Mom," he said, his voice soft, rough. "Please, just 5 minutes." I did not open the storm door. "You are not to come here, Marcus. Your lawyer has been instructed to communicate with mine." "I'm not here as a lawyer's client. I'm here as your son. Please." I studied his face. The anger was gone, buried under a layer of calculated sorrow. I saw the effort it took. I knew this was his last, best performance. I opened the storm door, but I stepped outside onto the porch with him. I did not invite him in. I closed the inner door behind me, leaving us in the semi-public space of the front steps. The sun was bright. A neighbor was mowing a lawn down the street. He held out the flowers. I did not take them. After a moment, he set them on the porch railing. "I'm sorry," he said, looking at his shoes. "For everything. The way I acted, it was shameful. I was shocked. I was hurt. I felt rejected. I said terrible things. I am deeply sorry." I waited. He looked up, his eyes pleading. "This legal fight, it's madness. It's destroying what's left of our family. I don't want that. I'm sure you don't either. Can we just call it off? Tell the lawyers to stand down." "The legal actions are a response to your threats, Marcus. You initiated them." "I was wrong. I was lashing out. Let's just stop, please." He took a step closer. I did not retreat. "Mom, I miss you. This house, it feels like a fortress now with me on the outside. That's not what it should be. It should be a home. My home, too, in a way." "It is my home," I said. "It has not been your home for over 15 years. You are a guest here. and guests do not make demands on the host's property." He flinched at the word guest. "I'm not a guest, I'm family." Family respects boundaries. Family does not litigate against one another. You have chosen a different path. "I'm choosing a new path now, the path back. Look, I get it. You were upset by what you heard. I would be too. It was a horrible, stupid thing to say. But people say stupid things when they're stressed. Can't you find it in your heart to forgive? To give me another chance? We can forget the trust. You keep control. Just put me back in the will. As a beneficiary, even a partial one. Something that shows you haven't completely cut me out of your life, out of your heart." There it was, the final offer, the compromise. He would drop the legal challenge if I would restore his status as heir. He would trade his claim to the entire prize for a guaranteed piece of it. The contrition was a bargaining chip. "No," I said. The word was simple, final. It hung in the air between us. His face crumpled, not into sadness, but into frustrated disbelief. Why? Why are you doing this? What more do you want from me? I've apologized, I'm begging you. What will it take?" "It is not about what you do now," I said. "It is about what you revealed then. You revealed that your love for me is conditional on your inheritance. I cannot unknow that. I will not base my legacy on a conditional relationship. The trust reflects that reality. It is not a punishment. It is a correction." "So that's it. After everything, after a lifetime, you're just discarding me." "I am not discarding you. You made a choice. You saw me as a means to an end. I have chosen to remove myself from that equation. You are an adult. Your life is your own to build. It is not my responsibility to fund it, especially not from my grave." He stared at me, and I saw the last flicker of hope die in his eyes. It was replaced by a cold, flat understanding. The performance was over. He had played his final card, and it had no value. "You're serious," he said, his voice hollow. "I am." "Then, what happens now between us?" "That is up to you," I said. "If you can accept the new terms, that I control my life and my assets, that you have no claim to them, and that our relationship must exist on a basis other than expectation of inheritance, then we can have a relationship. It will be different. It will have boundaries. It will not involve discussions of my house, my will, or my living arrangements. If you cannot accept those terms, then there is no relationship to be had." He gave a short, bitter laugh. "A relationship with boundaries? You mean a supervised visit, like I'm a dangerous person?" "You have shown yourself to be a person capable of causing me significant financial and emotional harm. Boundaries are the logical response." He picked up the pot of chrysanthemums from the railing. He looked at them, then at me. "You've become someone I don't even know." "The feeling," I said, "is mutual." He turned and walked down the porch steps. He did not look back. He got into his car and drove away, the flowers still sitting on the passenger seat. I stood on the porch for a long time. The mower down the street had stopped. The world was quiet. I felt a profound fatigue, but it was a clean fatigue, like after completing a difficult, necessary task. I went back inside. I locked the door. I walked to the kitchen and washed the garden soil from my hands. The phone did not ring. No more letters came that day. The confrontation was truly over. He had tested the walls of my resolve one last time, and he had found them solid. He had no more moves to make that I could not counter. The war, such as it was, had ended not with a bang, but with a quiet rejection on a sunny porch. I finished repotting the geraniums. I made dinner. I called Rosalind and told her the final chapter had closed. She listened, and then she said, "Good, now you can really begin." That night, I slept through the night for the first time since the whispered knife in the hallway. I did not dream of courtrooms or angry faces. I dreamed of empty garden beds, waiting for new seeds. The chrysanthemums Marcus left on the railing wilted within 2 days. I did not water them. I let them dry out, their yellow petals turning brittle and brown, and then I disposed of the entire pot in the green waste bin. It was a small, symbolic act, but a necessary one. I was done preserving dead things. That was months ago. Now it is a high summer morning, and I am in my garden. It is not the same garden. I took Rosalind's advice. I planted new things. A climbing rose with apricot-colored blooms now scrambles up the trellis by the back fence. I put in a row of lavender for its scent and a cluster of bold, red dahlias because they were ridiculous and joyful. The hydrangeas, my old favorites, are still there, but they are no longer the sole focus. They are part of an ensemble. The soil is warm under my knees. I am deadheading the spent rose blossoms, my pruning shears making clean, sharp snips. The air smells of cut grass and damp earth. A bee hums nearby. This is not an escape. It is an engagement. I am present in this moment, in this place, wholly. The back screen door slaps shut. Rosalind walks out, holding 2 glasses of iced tea. She sets one on the small patio table and pulls a chair into the shade of the oak tree. She has taken to stopping by unannounced, and I have taken to leaving the back door unlocked for her. The lavender is taking over, she observes, sipping her tea. It's supposed to. It knows what it's doing. She laughs. We sit in comfortable silence for a while. The community center is having a fundraising art auction next month. Rosalind has contributed 3 paintings. I have volunteered to help coordinate the silent auction bids. The proceeds will go to the Senior Outreach Program. My name is not on the committee list as Alina Hawthorne, mother of. It is listed as Ellie Hawthorne, volunteer. I heard from Lorraine yesterday, I say, snipping off a faded bloom. Stephen Briggs formally withdrew his inquiry. He cited a reevaluation of the facts. No further action is anticipated. Rosalind nods slowly. So he finally looked at the cost-benefit analysis and found a deficit. It would seem so. There is no triumph in the statement. It is a simple report of fact. The legal threat, which had been a low, buzzing anxiety in the background, has ceased. The closed system of the trust has proven impermeable. My phone, sitting on the table next to Rosalind, vibrates with an email alert. She glances at the screen. It's from the Women's Haven Project Director. I put down my shears, wipe my hands on a towel, and pick up the phone. I open the email. It is an update on the capital campaign for a new assisted living wing. The director thanks me for my recent consultation on their library space and invites me to the upcoming groundbreaking ceremony. My donation, through the trust's future proceeds, is the lead gift for the project. They have named the wing in honor of Robert and me. I show the email to Rosalind. She reads it, her eyes growing soft. Well, look at that. A legacy with your name on it that doesn't involve a headstone. That is precisely what it is. The house will one day be sold. The money will transform into safe rooms, books, programs. It will help women who have nowhere else to go. It will help children learn to read. My history, the value of my life's work, will be converted into shelter and knowledge. It will not be converted into a down payment on a luxury condo for a man who saw me as an obstacle. Are you going to the groundbreaking? Rosalind asks. I think I will. I place the phone back on the table. I look at my hands, speckled with soil, a few small scratches from the rose thorns. They are capable hands. They have held books, pulled weeds, signed legal documents that changed the course of things. They are not the hands of a victim. They are the hands of an architect. Do you ever regret it? Rosalind's question is quiet, without judgment. The finality of it, with him. I look out over the garden at the mix of old and new growth. I think of the whispered words in the hallway, a poison that infected everything. I think of the cold rage on Marcus's face, the transactional plea on the porch. I think of the silence that has followed. It is not a peaceful silence between us because there is no us. It is simply silence. I regret that it was necessary, I say finally. I regret that the son I loved became a man I could not trust, but I do not regret my response. Regret would imply I wish I had chosen a path of continued vulnerability. I do not wish that. I chose survival. I chose sovereignty. I cannot regret that. Rosalind reaches over and pats my arm. Good. The afternoon sun climbs higher. The ice in our glasses melts, diluting the tea. We talk of inconsequential things, a new restaurant, a book we both disliked, the stubborn rabbit that keeps getting into Rosalind's vegetable patch. Later, after she has gone home, I water the new plantings. The hose hisses, sending a fine spray over the dahlias. The house stands behind me, solid and quiet in the dappled light. It is no longer a symbol of duty or a future inheritance. It is a building I live in. It holds my things. It shelters me. Its eventual fate is securely documented, but that is a matter for a distant future. Today, it is simply where I make my tea and read my books and sleep through the night. The revenge, if one wants to call it that, was never about hurting Marcus. It was about removing his power to hurt me. It was about reclaiming the narrative of my own life from someone who wanted to write its ending for his own benefit. The weapon was not anger, but the cold, precise application of law. The victory is not his loss, but my peace. I turn off the hose and coil it neatly on its hook. I go inside. The rooms are cool, filled with the soft, late afternoon light. I walk through them. I see photographs, furniture, books, the artifacts of a life lived. They are no longer hostages to an expectation. They are just my things. I sit in my favorite chair by the window that looks out onto the garden. The apricot rose is now backlit by the sun, each petal glowing. I feel a sense of contentment, deep and settled. It is not the happiness of before, which was intertwined with a narrative I did not control. This is quieter. It is rooted in the knowledge that I am the author now. The next chapter, whatever it may be, will be written by my hand.